Thank you all for coming here today and for tuning in virtually. I am really excited to talk about the fiscal challenges of climate change mitigation in the G7 economies today. So we'll just dive right in. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about a little bit of background. The Paris Agreement is an international treaty that is aimed towards reducing, limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. And they stipulate that 1.5 degrees would be much preferred. Realistically, we're not really heading in that direction. It's looking more like 2 degrees. But every fraction of a degree really matters. And so we're trying to keep it below that number as much as possible. And we're going to do that through mitigation primarily. And mitigation is any activity that reduces greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that can be removal or prevention. So things like certainly transitioning to clean renewable energies will have to happen, but also things like retrofitting buildings to make them more energy efficient. The list is very long, and all of these solutions are going to require large-scale investments. They're going to cost money, and so it's very important to understand the fiscal implications of achieving this. So my research is focused primarily, specifically on the G7 countries. G7 just means group of 7. It's an intergovernmental forum of the world's largest advanced economies. And I've listed them here. It's the UK, the US, Japan, Italy, Germany, France, and Canada. So what are the financing gaps for mitigation within the G7 countries is the question that I'm trying to answer with my research. And I needed basically 2 components. I need to figure out what they need to be spending on mitigation to achieve these goals and how much they're actually spending on mitigation to achieve these goals. And so I started by looking at nationally determined contributions. NDCs are a requirement. They're mandatory under the Paris Agreement. So all parties to the convention have to submit. Basically, these are like emissions goals, and they have to be updated every 5 years and made more ambitious. But they can be updated at any time. And so the Climate Action Tracker is a really great resource. It monitors their progress towards their NDC goals, and as well as measures the ambition level of these goals. And so then I looked for actual climate spending, and I looked at the OECD to sort of create an estimate for what these countries are currently spending. And then I compared this gap to total government spending and deficits to see if closing the gap would have major or minor fiscal implications. And this is what I found. So I'm going to take us through it, but starting on the left there, we see the deficit. This is the most recent deficit for each country. And then general government spending. This is public spending on things like education, health, public safety, that kind of stuff. And then here you'll see environmental protection spending, which I also found from the OECD. I'm very familiar with that resource at this point. So environmental protection includes waste and wastewater management, pollution abatement and protection of biodiversity and landscape. And then over here we have research, development, and dissemination of energy technology. So this is budgetary flows in energy efficiency, renewables, nuclear hidrogen, and I subtracted out fossil fuels because that is not what we're going for here. And these combined give me an estimate of what these countries are currently spending on climate mitigation. Now, oh no, I was doing so well and my table is obviously not complete. So I really wish I could tell you why, but it turns out that there is no real detailed estimates of needed spending for what these countries need to spend to achieve these very clear-cut goals that they are putting out so carefully. And it makes it very difficult to determine a gap of what we need to be spending. So I decided to focus in on the US and sort of just play around. I plugged in Biden's infrastructure law. I subtracted I calculated the climate-related portions of this law and used that as current spending. And then I looked at Elizabeth Warren's climate plan and did the same thing and used that as an estimate of needed spending because it's a very comprehensive plan. Typically, when climate policy is put forth by party-specific, like parties during campaigning, they can be very vague so that they can't easily be picked apart during the campaign. But this plan is very detailed. And so when we look closer at this, and also I'm using the pre-COVID deficit because that's more of an average. That's what it will typically look like. Our post-COVID deficit is a mess right now. And so we see that Biden's infrastructure law is about 22% of the pre-COVID deficit, and Warren's climate plan is like 29% of pre-COVID deficit. So when we look closer at this, this is about 0.5% of GDP difference, which is roughly 1/7 of annual military spending. And I do need more economic training, but in my amateur opinion, I feel like this is in the realm of possibility. Good news. It's just a bummer that we don't have these figures. There's a substantial lack of mitigation costing across all 7 countries, and we will need to calculate these in order to meet emissions reduction targets and create a fiscal plan that will be able to also address inflation and costs. And I just want to thank my wonderful mentors. This has been a wonderful experience, and I really appreciate all of you and the REX program and all of my great new friends. This was a wonderful, wonderful experience because of you guys.